All right, let's talk about something that we all use every single day, but maybe don't really think about. The cloud. It's the invisible engine running pretty much our entire digital lives, from our work to our entertainment. But what is it really, and where is it? Let's dive in.
I want you to think back for a second. Remember when you had to go to a store and buy software in a big physical box? Or that absolute moment of panic when you realize the one file you desperately need is saved on your desktop computer and you're miles away from home? For decades, that was just how it worked. Everything was local, stuck on one machine.
But fast forward to today, and that whole world is basically gone. Your photos, your music, your apps, they just seamlessly follow you from your phone to your laptop. They don't really live on any of your devices anymore. They live somewhere else, out there, in this thing we call the cloud. So, what is this place, and where is it? That's what we're here to figure out.
So to really get why the cloud is such a game changer, we first have to understand the world it replaced. And for businesses, running their own tech was, well, it was a story of insane costs, mind-numbing complexity, and being physically locked into server rooms, which, no joke, were sometimes literally called cages.
This table really breaks down the old-school IT nightmare. First, you had the insane cost. You had to shell out a ton of cash for these huge, expensive servers and then hire a whole team just to babysit them. Then there was scaling. If your website suddenly got popular, good luck. Adding more power took weeks and a massive check. And what if traffic slowed down? Too bad. You were stuck paying for all that hardware you weren't even using. And the biggest risk of all? If that one central server went down, your entire business just stopped.
Clearly, this system was broken. The world was crying out for a better way. And the solution came from a huge shift in thinking, a really revolutionary idea to treat computing not as a product you own, but as a utility you just use, like flipping on a light switch.
And you know, the craziest part is, this idea is not new at all. Way back in 1961, computer scientist John McCarthy had this incredible vision. He predicted a future where computing power could just be piped into our homes and businesses on demand, like water or electricity. You wouldn't need your own power plant. You'd just plug into the grid. It was an idea that was way, way ahead of its time.
And that is exactly what cloud computing is. It's simply the delivery of all those computing services, servers, storage, software, you name it, over the internet. So instead of owning and maintaining all that gear yourself, you're basically just renting it from these gigantic global data centers run by companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google.
Now, the cloud didn't just appear out of thin air. It was a long evolution. It really started back in the 50s with these giant, powerful mainframes. Then, in the 80s, we got cluster computing, where you could link up cheaper computers together. The 90s took that even further with grid computing, connecting machines across different locations. Each step made computing more distributed and more powerful, paving the way for that final leap in the 2000s. Truly on-demand, flexible resources available to anyone, anywhere, right over the internet.
So the cloud comes along and solves all these huge problems, giving businesses these incredible new abilities. It basically gives them superpowers. But, like any good superhero story, there's always a catch. There's always some kryptonite.
Let's break down those trade-offs. On one hand, the superpowers are amazing. You get things like elasticity, which we're about to dive into, and a pay-as-you-go model. But the kryptonite is just as real. For one, you're completely dependent on the internet. We've all been there, right? The Wi-Fi goes down and suddenly your work or your movie night is over. You're also handing over your most sensitive data to another company, which comes with security risks. And it can be a real pain to switch from one cloud provider to another, a problem we call vendor lock-in.
Okay, let's zoom in on the biggest superpower of them all, elasticity. This is the real magic of the cloud. It's the ability for a system to automatically and instantly grow or shrink its computing power to perfectly match whatever the demand is in that exact moment. It's not just about being big, it's about being exactly the right size, all the time.
So here's why this is such a revolution. Remember how companies had to guess their busiest day and buy enough servers to handle it? That's called over-provisioning, and it meant they were wasting a ton of money 99% of the time. With the cloud, a service like Netflix can automatically scale up its power for that Friday night movie rush and then scale right back down on a quiet Tuesday morning. They only pay for what they use, second by second. It totally rewrites the economics of running a digital business.
Now, the cloud isn't just one thing. It's delivered in different layers, and a great way to think about it is like building a house. At the bottom, you have infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. This is like renting the land and the raw materials, the basic servers and storage. In the middle, you have platform as a service, or PaaS. This is like getting a pre-built foundation and frame, so developers can start building their apps without worrying about the low-level stuff. And at the very top is what most of us use every day, software as a service, or SaaS. This is the finished house, fully furnished, ready to move in. Think Google Docs, Dropbox, Spotify. The software is just there, ready for you.
So we've covered the history, the tech, the pros, and the cons, but let's bring it all back home. Because the most important thing to understand is just how deeply the cloud is now woven into the fabric of our daily lives. It really is everywhere all at once. Seriously, think about it. Every single time you stream a movie, listen to a song on Spotify, back up your phone's photos, or work with a teammate on a shared document, you are using the cloud. You might not see the servers, but in that moment, you're connecting to one of these massive, remote data centers that's storing and delivering that content right to your screen.
So who's actually running this massive global system? Well, it turns out it's a really, really small club. Amazon Web Services, or AWS, is the undisputed leader. They're followed by Microsoft's Azure and then Google Cloud. This concentration means that the stability, the security, and the policies of just these three companies have a gigantic impact on the digital world we all live in.
And that really brings us to the most important question to leave you with. There's no doubt, the cloud has given us unbelievable power and convenience. It's made things possible that were pure science fiction just a couple of decades ago. But it also represents a fundamental trade-off. As more and more of our lives, our data, our memories, our work, move from devices we own to servers owned by a handful of giant companies, we have to ask ourselves, what's the true price of all this convenience? What are we giving up in terms of our own privacy and control? That's something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.